When Virgo does not forgive nor forget, the heavens stir with a silent storm. This is not the firestorm of Mars or the tempestuous waters of Neptune, but rather a cosmic calculation, a quiet severance born from the wisdom of discernment. Virgo, ruled by Mercury, the celestial messenger, is often mistaken for being overly analytical or perfectionistic. Yet behind this meticulous facade lies a sacred mission: the pursuit of truth, of integrity, of purity in intention and action. Virgo forgives easily when there is humility, honesty, and growth, but when betrayal strikes at the core of their values, when chaos is chosen over clarity, they do not forget, nor do they offer pardon lightly. In the grand cosmic order, Virgo holds the vibration of the healer, the priestess, the keeper of sacred order. When they turn their back, it is not with the fury of vengeance, but with the solemnity of divine justice. This is the moment when forgiveness becomes impossible, not out of spite, but because the soul of Virgo has measured the weight of the transgression and found it incompatible with their vision of harmony. This is a sign governed not by impulse but by profound reasoning, and when that reasoning reaches the conclusion that a wound cannot be reconciled, it marks the end of the road. The gates close not with thunder, but with quiet certainty. The memory of Virgo is not one of petty grudges but of crystalline records. They remember not just the act, but the pattern, the context, the meaning behind every betrayal. Their mind is a sacred archive, holding every moment up to the light for inspection. If you have broken their trust once, they may look to the stars for signs of your redemption. But if you show them a cycle that repeats, a lesson unlearned, they will step away, not because they lack compassion, but because they have a duty to their own evolution. This is the epic inner journey of Virgo. They come into this world to refine, to distill the rawness of life into something higher, something sacred. And when someone becomes a source of disorder, of entropy in their realm of sacred service, the response is not chaos, but the withdrawal of light. They disappear from your world with the same precision with which they once served it. You will feel their absence like the sudden silence after a symphony. Virgo will not slam the door. They will remove it entirely. Do not mistake this for weakness or coldness. This is one of the greatest acts of self-honoring that exists in the zodiac. When Virgo does not forgive nor forget, it is because their spirit has ascended beyond the drama of retribution. They are not here to burn bridges unnecessarily, but neither will they leave them standing if they lead to ruins. They are the architects of soul sanctuaries. Every boundary they draw, every tie they cut, is a spell cast for personal sovereignty. They are the alchemists of the zodiac, and sometimes alchemy requires fire to purify, but sometimes it demands the quiet refusal to engage. Within the grand mythology of the cosmos, Virgo is the sacred scribe, the guardian of divine order. When they turn away from someone, it is inscribed in the stars, written with invisible ink on the scrolls of destiny. It is not easily undone. Redemption, if ever possible, must be proven through action, not begged for through words. The journey back into their favor is not a request. It is a pilgrimage. One must walk it barefoot, through the sharp terrain of humility and reflection. And yet, behind their silence, behind their cool distance, lies a heart that once gave wholly. Virgo does not invest lightly. If they have turned from you, it is because they gave you a place in their world, in their sacred systems, in their meticulous love. And when you desecrated that place, they made the most painful decision of all, to honor themselves above the connection. This is not cruelty. This is celestial alignment. So when Virgo does not forgive nor forget, it is not the absence of grace, but the presence of divine order. It is a recalibration of karma, a sacred act of protection. In the epic song of the zodiac, Virgo's refusal to forgive is not the final note, but a turning point, a solemn reminder that love must be earned, that trust is a temple, and that some doors, once closed by the stars, do not open again. And so Virgo walks forward, eyes fixed on the horizon, guided not by regret but by purpose, cloaked in quiet power, crowned by the unwavering strength of self-respect. When Virgo decides not to forgive nor forget, there is a deeper undercurrent that moves beyond the personal and flows into the collective journey of the soul. This is not simply an emotional reaction. It is a sacred act of discernment encoded within Virgo's astrological essence. Virgo is the sign of service, humility, and dedication, but that very service demands standards. Standards not imposed by pride but born from a higher intelligence. There is a cosmic geometry that governs Virgo's heart, a divine architecture where every emotion, every gesture, every loyalty must find its rightful place. When someone disrupts that harmony with betrayal, deception, or carelessness, Virgo does not simply react. They recalibrate their entire inner system. This act is not emotional revenge, but spiritual realignment. There is a deep karmic dimension to Virgo's refusal to forgive or forget. The soul of Virgo often incarnates with a mission to cleanse, to purify, to refine not just themselves but the energetic spaces they inhabit. When someone brings toxic patterns into those spaces, Virgo becomes an instrument of karmic justice. They do not seek to punish but to contain the damage, to neutralize the infection before it spreads further into their sacred garden. In this sense, their non-forgiveness is a boundary forged in the fires of cosmic responsibility. It is a refusal to become an accomplice to spiritual negligence. Virgo is often underestimated because its strength does not roar, it resonates. It does not dominate, it regulates. But in this regulation lies a form of power that outlasts explosions. It is the power of Saturn's wisdom expressed through Mercury's clarity. While the world may glorify grand gestures of forgiveness, Virgo holds space for a different form of heroism. The courage to walk away when patterns cannot be reformed, when souls refuse to evolve, when truth is continually dismissed. This kind of silence is not defeat. It is sovereignty. Virgo becomes an unseen guardian of order, choosing exile over the corruption of their sacred codes. There is a purity in Virgo's perception that borders on the mystical. They see not only what is, but what could be. They sense the potential in people, often before those people sense it themselves. When that potential is squandered, when people choose falsehood over truth, chaos over accountability, Virgo feels not just disappointment but a rupture in the fabric of what could have been. They mourn not only the present betrayal but the future that was denied. This grief, refined and internalized, becomes a sacred silence. And in that silence, Virgo transcends the need for conflict. They become untouchable not through detachment, but through sacred preservation. Virgo's refusal to forgive is not always forever. But when it is because they have seen the full arc of the story and know, with the eyes of a divine librarian, that the chapter must close. They do not erase, but they archive. They place the memory in a vault where it no longer holds emotional charge, but serves as a symbol of growth. This memory becomes part of their spiritual armor, not a wound but a talisman of wisdom earned through pain. To understand Virgo is to understand the sacred art of pruning. Just as a master gardener cuts away the dying branches to save the tree, Virgo cuts ties not out of bitterness but from the wisdom that not all connections are meant to survive the winter. In doing so, they make room for new blossoms, new truths, new alignments with their evolving frequency. Forgiveness, for Virgo, is not a default state. It is an earned blessing. And if it is withheld, it is because the soul before them has not aligned with the principles Virgo lives by. This unwavering adherence to their internal code is what transforms Virgo into an epic archetype of inner strength. While others waver in the winds of sentiment, Virgo stands grounded in their truth. And in a world where emotional chaos is often mistaken for depth, Virgo brings sacred order, healing clarity, and the radiant strength of self-trust. They are not here to carry everyone. They are here to hold space for those who choose alignment, integrity, and growth. Those who betray that are not cast into shadow with hatred, but simply released into the freedom of their own path, beyond the boundaries of Virgo's grace. The epic nature of Virgo's non-forgiveness is not in its severity but in its serenity. It is the stillness after the storm, the quiet knowing that some truths are too sacred to compromise. In that space, Virgo becomes the high priest or priestess, the keeper of the flame, the one who walks away not to wound, but to protect the sanctity of their mission. They carry no banner of vengeance, only the mantle of discernment. And as they move forward, they become a beacon, not for reconciliation with the past, but for the radiant future that can only be built upon the unshakable foundation of truth. When Virgo refuses to forgive or forget, there is a sacred unraveling of illusions. Beyond the surface of justice and emotional distance lies a deeply mystical phenomenon, the activation of Virgo's sacred discernment as a portal to higher service. Forgiveness, for Virgo, is not merely an act of grace. It is an energetic alignment. If the vibration of another soul remains incompatible with Virgo's evolving purpose, if the presence of that person continues to echo with dissonance, then Virgo becomes the quiet guardian of thresholds. They protect not only their peace, but the vibration of the space they hold in the collective weave of humanity. In this way, their silence becomes a form of prayer. Their absence becomes a living sigil of self-honoring. Virgo's rejection is not rooted in ego but in sacred geometry. The Virgo archetype is tied to the sixth house, the realm of service, health, purification, and daily ritual. When someone violates the spiritual hygiene of that sacred space, through manipulation, deceit, or emotional recklessness, Virgo perceives the impact not just emotionally but psychically. There is a rupture in the flow of universal order. Forgiveness, then, is not about releasing the wound alone. It is about assessing whether the balance of energies can be restored without diminishing the sanctity of the path ahead. And when it cannot, Virgo withdraws, not as a passive act, but as a sacred choice in the architecture of their destiny. Astrologically, Virgo is the mutable earth sign, the alchemist of the zodiac. They transmute suffering into wisdom, pain into structure, chaos into clarity. When they cannot forgive, it is often because the raw materials needed for transformation have been corrupted. The offense cannot be reworked. The pattern cannot be purified. Virgo sees that certain energies are meant to be composted, not rehabilitated within their field. This discernment is their power. Their refusal is not rigidity. It is an evolved intelligence that knows when to sever for the sake of divine protection. Virgo's cosmic inheritance is one of refinement. And in their journey, they often carry the karmic memory of lifetimes spent in servitude, sacrificing their needs for the sake of others' growth. In this lifetime, when Virgo chooses not to forgive, it may also be a soul-level breakthrough, a final renunciation of martyrdom, a reclamation of power long buried under obligation. This moment becomes an initiation. They no longer bind themselves to contracts of unbalanced giving. They become sovereign healers rather than sacrificial ones. Their memory, honed by Mercury's crystalline perception, does not dwell in bitterness but in sacred record-keeping. Virgo is the astrological scribe. They remember to protect the future. They remember so that they do not build the same altar twice for someone who burned it to the ground. They remember to fortify the temple walls. And within those walls, they nurture their sacred work, calling only those energies that honor the frequency of devotion and humility. Their boundaries are ceremonial, etched not in anger but in clarity. They do not close the door with rage. They close it with ritual. There is also a subtle majesty in Virgo's silence. This is not the silence of suppression, but the silence of transcendence. They are not withholding communication to punish, but to elevate the conversation beyond what the other is capable of receiving. They understand that some healing must occur in solitude, that some lessons can only be learned through separation. And in their absence, they become the mirror that reflects everything unresolved in the other. Their distance becomes a teacher, their detachment a revelation. In this way, even their refusal becomes a gift, albeit one that not all are ready to receive. The epic nature of Virgo lies not in spectacle but in sacred precision. Their strength is not thunderous. It is surgical. They remove what no longer serves not out of rejection, but out of devotion to the whole. They see how a single energetic distortion can ripple through timelines, how a single act of forgiveness given too soon can compromise 1,000 futures. So they wait, they watch, and if the soul who wronged them rises to the level of transformation, Virgo may one day extend their hand again, but not before the work is done. Virgo teaches that sacred order cannot be compromised by sentiment, that love without respect is chaos, that healing without accountability is illusion. They model a new paradigm of connection, one where forgiveness is earned not by pleading, but by becoming the kind of energy that belongs in their world. They do not chase, they do not argue, they evolve, and in their evolution, they leave behind maps, constellations of quiet strength, so others may one day find their way to the truth. In the end, when Virgo does not forgive or forget, it is not a closing of the heart, but a redirection of energy toward higher callings. They return to their sacred path, their rituals, their refinement of the world. They become the sanctuaries they once searched for. They are the keepers of clean flame, the architects of celestial order, the alchemists who know that sometimes the highest form of love is departure. And from that place they shine, not in noise, but in purpose, unwavering, exalted, and eternally aligned with the divine. When Virgo makes the unwavering decision not to forgive and not to forget, the subtle yet powerful influence of Chiron, the wounded healer, awakens within their astrological essence. Though Chiron is not the ruler of Virgo, its archetypal presence permeates Virgo's mission. Virgo's path is deeply tied to service, to refinement of the physical and spiritual vessel, to the healing of systems both internal and external. But this healing is not unconditional in the way it is often romanticized. Virgo does not heal blindly. They heal through understanding, through structure, through recognizing patterns, cycles, and consequences. When someone violates the integrity of their sacred space and shows no genuine transformation, Virgo understands that continued access would only perpetuate the wound. Their refusal to forgive becomes an act of spiritual medicine for both themselves and the collective timeline. Virgo's elemental nature, Earth, makes their experience of betrayal visceral, physical, grounded. It affects their body, their nervous system, their ability to focus and function. They internalize pain in ways that may not be visible to others, storing every detail in the silent archives of their consciousness. And because they process through logic and analysis, they do not simply feel the hurt, they dissect it. They look at where the thread broke, at how the damage could have been prevented, at what was revealed beneath the surface. In this, they become initiates in the ancient mystery of discernment. Their unforgiving nature is not a reaction. It is a result of sacred observation. They see the root of the imbalance. They see the structure beneath the lie, and they choose not to allow it back into the cathedral of their life. The constellation of Virgo is associated with Astrea, the last of the immortals to leave the earth, the embodiment of divine justice and purity. There is something timeless in Virgo's ethics, something ancient that remembers the original codes of cosmic order. When someone breaks a covenant with them, it's not just a personal betrayal. It feels like a fracture in the moral structure of the universe. And Virgo, as a keeper of order, carries the burden of that fracture deeply. Their non-forgiveness is a restoration of that order. Not through punishment, but through the removal of discordant energy. They are returning their space to equilibrium, casting out the frequencies that endanger the sacredness of their path. This devotion to sacred order extends into the metaphysical realms. Virgo's connection to the hermit archetype in the tarot, associated with introspection, soul-searching, and inner light, reveals the solitude they often embrace after betrayal. They retreat, but not to hide. They retreat to reclaim their energy, to return to the sacred cave of inner knowing, where wisdom crystallizes in silence. In this space, they do not nurse resentment. They refine insight. They reweave the torn fabric of their spiritual garment, stitch by stitch. And when they emerge, it is not as a wounded figure seeking reconciliation. It is as a sovereign soul who has retrieved their own medicine. Virgo's journey is deeply lunar in its rhythm. Hidden cycles of grief, purification, and rebirth. While they may appear composed on the surface, their internal seasons move with profound precision. When they choose not to forgive, they have already moved through countless inner chambers, weighing every possibility for resolution. Their final decision is never made in haste. It is born of sacred timing, and once made, it becomes as immutable as a carved rune. They are not holding on to the past. They are preserving the future. They are making space for frequencies that can hold, sustain, and uplift their sacred work. Anything else is released to its own destiny. The motivational power of Virgo's non-forgiveness lies in the inspiration it offers to others to rise. When Virgo closes the door, it is not only a mirror to the one who caused harm, it is a call to all who witness it to honor their own boundaries, to uphold the standard of truth, to recognize that forgiveness without transformation is not healing, but enabling. Virgo teaches the sacred art of selective mercy. Not all should be welcomed back. Not all are ready to meet the frequency of accountability. In a world that often confuses openness with wisdom, Virgo embodies the paradoxical truth that sometimes the most loving act is the refusal to make oneself available to harm. This archetype carries the keys of the temple not just to knowledge but to access. And once those keys are taken back, they are not given again without sacred initiation. Virgo does not seek revenge. They simply protect the inner sanctum. They know their worth. They know the value of their energy. And when that energy has been drained, disrespected, or exploited, they rise not through retaliation but through reallocation. They reinvest their power into themselves, into their sacred routines, into their calling. And in doing so, they become untouchable, not through distance, but through alignment with divine principle. Virgo's legacy is not in loud declarations, but in the refinement of reality. Their refusal to forgive is not a dead end. It is a redirection, a purification, a clarion call to sacred elevation. And in that stance, they embody an unshakable truth, that not all wounds must be reopened, not all relationships must be salvaged, and not all forgiveness is holy. Some of the most powerful acts of love are the ones done in silence, in solitude, in sovereign remembrance of who they are and why they came. Virgo walks that path with grace sharpened by discernment, with devotion bathed in clarity. And as they walk, they leave behind not fragments, but a trail of luminous precision, guiding others toward the same unapologetic wholeness. When Virgo chooses not to forgive nor to forget, the refusal becomes an invocation of sacred memory. In a cosmos governed by cycles and patterns, Virgo acts as the guardian of continuity and coherence. Their memory is not sentimental, it is structural. It holds the lineage of every lesson, every mistake, every contract unfulfilled. This memory is not a cage but a library, and Virgo is its silent keeper. They do not allow time to blur the essence of what occurred. They preserve the imprint as a blueprint for transformation, for themselves and for the world they serve. In this way, their inability to forget is not a flaw. It is a sacred trust bestowed upon them by the stars. Beneath the calm demeanor and methodical steps of Virgo lies the infinite reach of Mercury's mind, sharpened like the edge of a sacred blade. That blade is not wielded in haste or vengeance. It is forged through inner alchemy, through years of precision and analysis, through the unrelenting devotion to truth. When Virgo decides that a wrong cannot be absolved, it is not out of cruelty but clarity. They have seen beneath the surface into the bones of the interaction. They have seen the karmic cost of pretending that nothing happened. Their decision is never about holding on to pain. It is about refusing to build upon unstable ground. Virgo is a healer not because they mend every wound, but because they know which wounds must be left untouched to close properly. Some harm is beyond words, beyond reconciliation. Virgo accepts this reality with the grace of a soul who has known lifetimes of service and sacrifice. In choosing not to return to broken bonds, Virgo becomes the embodiment of a higher order of healing, one where personal boundaries are not seen as barriers but as sacred altars to self-respect. The pain of betrayal becomes transmuted into architecture, into rituals of renewal, into the daily acts of devotion that Virgo performs in solitude. They rise not because they are untouched, but because they learn how to use the pain as a blueprint for mastery. There is a holy exactness in the way Virgo navigates the aftermath of disillusionment. When the weight of disloyalty shatters their trust, they do not collapse, they reweave. They return to the elements, to earth and breath and rhythm, and from that simplicity they restore themselves. Their recovery is not theatrical. It is quiet, sacred, and lasting. They do not announce their healing, they live it. They channel it into every detail of their existence, into the refinement of their environment, into the cleansing of their energy field. Virgo becomes a temple, a place where only the worthy may enter, where the lessons of pain are not erased but engraved in light. Virgo's loyalty is a cosmic gift, precise and unwavering, but once that gift has been desecrated, there is no going back to the version of themselves that once trusted blindly. This is not coldness. It is evolution. In the zodiac, Virgo follows Leo, and this is no coincidence. After the roaring passion of the lion comes the sacred discernment of the virgin. Virgo takes the raw fire of experience and refines it into knowledge. Their path is the journey from instinct to intention. So when they do not forgive, it is a declaration that the experience must serve a higher purpose. It is no longer about mending the past, but about protecting the future. There is an ancient nobility in Virgo's choice to walk away from what dishonored them. In the mythology of the zodiac, Virgo is often linked to goddesses of harvest and purity, Demeter, Astrea, Ceres. These deities do not seek revenge. They govern through cycles. They understand that every season has its end, that some fields must be left fallow. Virgo follows this wisdom. They let go not in rage, but in reverence for what must no longer grow. And by doing so, they become the silent hand that guides fate toward balance. Their absence becomes more powerful than presence. Their detachment becomes a lesson in self-restoration. In a world that glamorizes drama and chaos, Virgo embodies the epic in the quiet act of reclaiming peace. Their refusal to re-enter chaos is a form of spiritual rebellion. Their non-forgiveness is a boundary set not just for themselves but for the collective soul. It is a message to the universe that love without accountability will not be entertained, that betrayal masked as passion will not be romanticized. Virgo redefines what it means to be kind, not as passive acceptance, but as courageous discernment. They teach through example that forgiveness is sacred, and that sacredness cannot be rushed or demanded. It must be earned through consistency, integrity, and the willing transformation of shadow. What Virgo guards, above all, is alignment. Every aspect of their being seeks coherence between thought and action, word and deed, promise and outcome. When someone breaks that alignment, Virgo experiences it as a spiritual dissonance that echoes through every layer of their being. Restoring that harmony often requires solitude, silence, and the release of those who refuse to resonate. Their forgiveness cannot be coerced. It flows only when truth returns, when humility is present, when the actions align with words. Until then, Virgo holds the line, not out of pride but out of purpose. Virgo walks with quiet majesty, grounded in the rhythm of sacred work. They are architects of energetic sanctity, stewards of truth in a world intoxicated by illusion. And when they choose not to forgive, they are not breaking connection. They are preserving the divine order within their soul. They are keeping the altar clean. They are tending to the light. They are reminding all who encounter them that some thresholds cannot be crossed without reverence. Virgo, in their refusal, becomes a force of liberation, for themselves and for others ready to rise to meet the sacred standard. When Virgo withholds forgiveness and refuses to forget, they are not simply reacting to pain. They are anchoring the sacred principles of precision, purity, and integrity into the earth itself. This act is not merely personal but archetypal. Virgo does not hold grudges in the emotional sense as others might interpret. What they hold is memory encoded with meaning, memory as a mirror for evolution. Their soul, ruled by Mercury and aligned with the cosmic laws of discernment, knows when something cannot be purified without losing its essence. When Virgo walks away, when they close the gates of their heart, it is because they have reached the edge of what can be salvaged, and they will not cross the threshold of spiritual compromise. There is something deeply solar in the aftermath of Virgo's decision. Though governed by Mercury, Virgo reflects the solar archetype of quiet radiance. After betrayal or dishonesty, Virgo begins the sacred work of reintegrating their light. They do not need the spectacle of revenge or confrontation. They simply withdraw, and in doing so, deny the offending energy access to the sacred codes of their being. This withdrawal is not weakness but a masterstroke of energetic sovereignty. They know how to disentangle threads that are no longer meant to be part of the divine tapestry. Their refusal to forgive is often misunderstood by those who have not done the inner work to recognize that Virgo's boundaries are temples. not walls. Virgo's very essence is structured around refinement. In the wheel of the zodiac, they are the bridge between the self and others, the sign that prepares the soul for partnership, for service, for selfless acts without losing the precision of identity. When a betrayal or a repeated disrespect occurs, Virgo's refusal is a reminder that no sacred service can be given from an unprotected core. They do not operate on sentimental currency. They operate from truth. And when truth is broken, Virgo becomes the quiet sentinel who will not re-engage unless the frequency is reattuned. This process is not dramatic. It is methodical, sacred, and unshakable. Virgo also understands karma on a cellular level. Their rulership of the sixth house, associated with daily ritual, health, and service, gives them an embodied understanding of how energy operates through repetition and action. When they refuse to forgive, it is often because they have seen the karmic patterns play out too many times. They recognize when a person or a situation has become a loop rather than a lesson. They do not need to keep re-entering the fire to prove their capacity for compassion. Their sole work is to transmute, not to be consumed. They carry the sacred duty of recognizing when growth must come through release rather than reunion. There is also a hidden mystical side to Virgo that often goes unseen. Beneath their practical nature lies a quiet initiatory energy. They are the sacred priest or priestess in the temple of embodiment, bringing divine intelligence into form. Their standards are not born of judgment, but of deep reverence for what life can be when built upon truth. When they do not forgive, they are not casting someone into darkness. They are simply choosing not to pollute their light with distortions. Their silence becomes an invocation for higher clarity. Their absence becomes a rite of purification. Those who come into contact with Virgo's withdrawal often find themselves changed, not through punishment, but through the pressure of confronting their own lack of integrity. Virgo's journey is also about remembering that they are not here to fix others. In past expressions of this archetype, Virgo may have overextended themselves, believing that their healing gifts must always be used to restore what is broken. But when Virgo ascends into full embodiment, they understand that not everything broken is meant to be repaired within their field. Their forgiveness is a precious elixir, and it is given only when the vibration has been elevated to match the purity of their offering. Anything less would be a desecration of the divine intelligence they serve. Even in isolation, Virgo's energy remains an active force of service. They continue to build, to heal, to purify, to organize the chaotic energies around them into sacred form. But they no longer do so for those who cannot meet them in devotion. Their energy becomes consecrated. Their daily routines, their words, their choices, all become prayers. And in this way, Virgo transforms into a living ritual, walking the earth as a sanctified vessel, no longer bending for the sake of peace but standing in the frequency of unwavering alignment. In the grand narrative of the zodiac, Virgo teaches that love without clarity is confusion, that kindness without discernment is enabling, and that healing without boundaries is self-betrayal. Their refusal to forgive is never the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new chapter, one where truth is honored, where energy is respected, and where every connection must be forged through sacred intention. They offer the world not just the gift of order, but the courage to walk away from what dishonors the soul's highest path. Their legacy is not written in loud declarations or dramatic severings. It is inscribed in the silent choices that protect their inner altar. Virgo becomes the light that others must rise to meet, not because they are withholding love, but because they have become love in its highest form, disciplined, discerning, incorruptible. And in that form, they carry the power not only to heal themselves, but to elevate the collective toward a future where forgiveness is sacred, and sacredness is never sacrificed. When Virgo stands immovable in their decision not to forgive or forget, they become the embodiment of a higher spiritual law, one that transcends common ideals of unconditional mercy and instead honors the architecture of accountability. This is not the hardness of bitterness, but the firmness of a soul that has learned through lifetimes that compassion without discernment erodes truth. Virgo, as the keeper of integrity, does not withhold forgiveness to punish, but to protect the sanctity of growth. In their silence, they transmit a higher lesson. that evolution demands confrontation with the real, and that grace, while infinite, must be met with readiness. Virgo's deep alignment with archetypal priesthoods across civilizations underscores their role as custodians of thresholds. They are not gatekeepers of ego but of essence, and as such, they do not allow passage where the vibration is misaligned. Their refusal to forgive is the refusal to compromise the sacred codes written into their soul by Mercury's crystalline intelligence. In ancient temples, the keepers of knowledge were selective about what could be brought into holy spaces. So too is Virgo. They understand the energetic consequences of repeated transgressions, and they do not allow the desecration of their inner sanctum under the guise of peace. Their judgment is not rooted in cruelty, but in clarity. It is the judgment of the healer who has seen the same wound reopened too many times by the same hands. It is the gaze of the alchemist who knows when a substance will only poison the mix. In the language of the stars, Virgo is the analyst, the purifier, the one who removes what does not serve the sacred whole. In doing so, they elevate themselves and others out of karmic loops. The refusal to forgive can be the highest act of love when it protects both souls from perpetuating cycles of suffering. In this, Virgo steps into their role as a cosmic servant of evolution, not just healing what has been broken, but preventing the recurrence of harm through sovereign boundaries. Virgo's capacity for discernment often hides a depth of spiritual sacrifice. They are not unfamiliar with the shadows of self-doubt and guilt that can come with the decision to withdraw forgiveness. But they have learned that the cost of false peace is too great. Their inner dialogue becomes refined, their emotional field tempered by the fires of introspection. They are not immune to pain. They metabolize it, transmute it, and use it as material for inner mastery. This is the sacred work of Virgo behind the scenes, often invisible but always potent. What appears as detachment is, in truth, the result of deep spiritual labor that has burned away the illusion of superficial resolution. In the deeper zodiacal mysteries, Virgo prepares the soul for Libra, the sign of balance, justice, and harmony. But Virgo knows that true harmony cannot arise without purification. Before the scales of Libra can be balanced, the distortions must be removed. Virgo's non-forgiveness becomes the final cleansing. It is the stripping away of falseness, the refusal to perpetuate spiritual toxicity under the guise of unity. This prepares the way for right relationship, for harmony that does not demand the death of one's truth. It is Virgo who builds the altar. It is Virgo who sets the standard, and all else must rise or fall in response to that unwavering dedication. There is also a planetary wisdom in Virgo's relationship to time. Ruled by Mercury but grounded in Earth, Virgo perceives the unfolding of life with both speed and gravity. When they refuse to forget, it is not out of obsession with the past but a recognition that certain memories must remain intact as markers of spiritual intelligence. These memories are guideposts, not burdens. They serve as encoded lessons, reminders of what has been survived, what has been learned, and what must never be repeated. To forget would be to risk amnesia of the soul's hard-earned wisdom. Virgo remembers, not to suffer, but to safeguard evolution. This remembrance becomes a beacon of power. Through the fires of discernment, Virgo becomes the sage, the one who speaks little but whose words cut through illusion like sacred geometry. They do not entertain confusion. They do not yield to chaos. Their power is not loud, but it is absolute. They do not chase reconciliation, they embody restoration. They become an inner temple so pure, so attuned to truth, that only those in alignment can stand within it. And this frequency changes the world more than any shouted confrontation. Virgo elevates through vibration, through invisible recalibration, through the silent radiance of uncorrupted presence. In the mythic landscape, Virgo holds the codes of sacred service, but this service is never servitude. It is chosen, it is deliberate, and it is never given to those who desecrate it. When Virgo refuses to forgive, they declare that their essence is not to be mishandled, not to be offered at the altar of someone else's unhealed wounds. This is a heroic act in a world that so often demands empathy without reciprocity, vulnerability without safety, and peace at the cost of integrity. Virgo will not consent to that distortion. Their love is not weakness, it is ritual. Their standards are not rigid, they are the scaffolding of sacred architecture. From this place of radical alignment, Virgo becomes an initiator for others. Their absence becomes a mirror in which others must face their own fragmentation. Their silence becomes a lesson in energetic consequence. And their refusal to forget becomes a legacy of integrity that speaks across lifetimes. They do not erase their scars. They wear them as constellations mapped into their soul's sky, each one a testament to where they said no to violation and yes to sovereignty. Virgo's final and most profound gift is that of energetic transfiguration. Even when they walk away, they bless what once was, not with naive hope, but with the higher grace of detachment. They wish no harm. They seek no revenge. They simply remove themselves from what is no longer resonant, and in doing so, they become a lighthouse. They guide not through direct intervention, but by holding to their frequency no matter who tries to dim it. In this stance, Virgo teaches the world that strength is not in domination, but in clarity. That love does not require access. That forgiveness, when withheld in truth, can be the most sacred medicine of all.